Here is the previous curfew that applied to teens 17 and younger. It ran from 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then midnight to 6 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. The new curfew applies to anyone 16 and under. That's going to be in effect 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then until midnight on the weekends. Right now, the Atlanta City Council, they are considering its own revised curfew. Councilmember Keisha Waits has previously pushed a 7 p.m. and an 8 p.m. curfew. Yesterday, she released a statement thanking Fulton County for passing their curfew and says that she is open to a 10 p.m. curfew in Atlanta. It is a video you will only see on 11 Alive. Gwinnett County Police sending out a new warning to anyone who thinks it's fun to point lasers at helicopters. You can see just how fast they can track you down and kind of the look from the pilot when that laser shines on the aircraft. This new video from Saturday, it shows Air One patrolling Duluth. You can see how the helicopter took that hit from the green laser, and those still photos showing what it looked like at the exact moment inside the cockpit. Police say this could cause a crash and it puts everyone in danger.
It could definitely be very catastrophic, not just for the pilots and the agency, but for citizens that are near the incident.
The technology inside the helicopter shows street names and zones of the city, so officers inside the chopper, they were able to get an address. They were at the front door in 9 minutes at that home. One person was charged. Police say that should be a reminder that crimes like these come with some serious consequences. All right, we know flu season got off to a roaring start in Georgia. While the number of weekly cases are now dropping off a little bit, we've still got a little ways to go. So if you've already had the flu or the respiratory virus RSV, you might be thinking, okay, I'm good, I don't have to worry. But as Jerry Carnes verifies for us, that might not be the case.
It's bad enough to get the aches and pains of the flu once, or the coughing and wheezing of RSV. But can you catch those illnesses twice in the same cold and flu season? Let's verify. Our sources are Dr. Harry Hyman of Georgia State University's School of Public Health and Dr. Preeti Jaggi, infectious disease specialist with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and Emory University. When you get the flu, your body develops protection for the rest of that season from the strain of the flu you got. But Dr. Hyman reminds us there's more than one strain.
If I get influenza A, the strain, and I get over that, but then 3 weeks later, I get influenza B, or I get exposed to influenza B, I'm still susceptible to that.
According to the Centers for Disease Control, most people get respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, by the age of 2. Dr. Jaggi points out that just like with the flu, there are different strains of RSV.
It's not probably as common with RSV as it would be with influenza, but there are definitely different strains of these different viruses, and you can get them again in the same season.
Scientists agree that if you're reinfected with RSV, the symptoms are not as severe. So we can verify it's true. You can get the flu or RSV twice in the same season. So don't assume one bout with an illness means your fight is over.
We're committed to answering any questions you have. So if you see a claim online you want us to verify, send us an
I reviewed a crime scene layout in relation to where some of the marker numbers were that are listed in my report. Those just reference numbers, and I reviewed where those were in relation to the crime scene that the evening where the two bodies were.
And is that just to assist us when we reference item number X, Y, or 1, 2, or 3? It allows us to then to testify as where that was located.
Yes, sir. I can.
All right, Agent Greer, I'm going to go down the list of items, and I'd like you to identify the item that was received for me, beginning with item numbers 2 through 5. Is slide item 2 through 5?
Yes, sir.
Your items 2 through 5? Did you conduct a review of that item?
Yes, sir. I did look at slid items 2 through 5.
And while I find those items, if you would, please explain how you receive items in general, how you receive items in the lab, what the condition is before you review them, and then what you do ultimately with that item.
Correct. Yes, sir. So as items are submitted to the SLED laboratory, those can come from agencies all over the state, to include our own SLED crime scene department. Those items are given assignments for multiple departments depending on what the requesting agency is asking to have completed. We are a full-service laboratory, so sometimes the evidence has to travel through to other departments before it arrives to me in the firearms department. Typically, if you want something like latent prints or DNA to be processed on those items, it would go there first, because when I get the item, I may decontaminate it or touch it, and those prints or DNA may not be relevant anymore, because you would find me on it. Evidence travels throughout the laboratory to those departments and through our evidence control department. I receive those items either from those analysts or from our evidence control technicians. And when I receive that item and before I begin my examination, I want to make sure that the item is submitted to me in a manner that I can tell that it's not been tampered with. So we use a lot of heat-sealed pouches, so I'll make sure those are sealed, or our cardboard box that it's sealed up, and I can tell that there's either evidence tape or initials of that sealing examiner prior to me, so that way the evidence has been preserved in a manner that I know no one has altered with it.
And just so we're clear, thank you, Mr. Greer. Just so we're clear, when I refer to items, sometimes I'll say items 2. Does that refer to the items that you received them as a SLED designation?
Yes, sir. One other thing about the SLED laboratory, when evidence is submitted to the lab, it receives its own unique lab number that's specific to our laboratory, and it also receives new item numbers, and that's so we can track it throughout the laboratory, and our analysts throughout the lab can report and identify those clearly.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. I'm going to hand you what's been entered into evidence already as States Exhibits 63 through 68. And I believe they correlate to items 2 through 7 on your report. Would you please take a moment to look at these items and let me know if you're familiar with them?
When we receive these items, I do mark the packaging, and I'm also looking for my heat-sealed pouch, and this is how I package the evidence after I examined it. So I'm just confirming that I see some of the information on these items. Yes, sir. This appears to be what was submitted to the SLED laboratory as items 2 through 7 in your State's Exhibits 63 through 68.
Thank you. And did you have an opportunity? I'll take those from you. Did you have an opportunity to examine these items?
Yes, sir, I did.
And if you would, please tell us what your findings were for these items.
I determined that each of those items, they were all fired S&B heads.
Your Honor, I'm renewing my prior objection to the opinion testimony based upon the hearing we had, just for the record.
Yes, sir. You may continue.
I determined that each of those were one fired S&B head stamp 300 blackout caliber cartridge case, and that was items 2 through 7. That's what each of those items were.
Mr. Greer, and the item on the screen in front of you would be what's marked as State's Exhibit 63. Is that representative of the collection of items that you reviewed in that batch?
Yes, sir.
All right. 300 blackout round. Were you able to see the head stamp on it? And I can give you back one of the items if you would. Were you able to identify the head stamp and who the manufacturer of that round was?
Yes, sir, I was.
All right. Who was that?
The manufacturer of items 2 through 7 was Cellier and Belleau, and you may hear that referred to as S&B.
300?
Yes, sir, and head stamp 300 blackout.
All right, Mr. Greer, I'm handing you what's been marked and entered into evidence already as State's Exhibits 33 and 34. Jim, do you want to see those? 33 and 34, which I believe correlate to 9 and 10 on your report. Would you please take a look at these items and let me know if you recognize them?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, and please tell us what they are.
SLED item 9, which is State's Exhibit 34, is a fired federal premium double-aught buck 3-inch Magnum shot shell. And SLED item 10, which is State's Exhibit 33, is one fired Winchester Drylock number 2 12-gauge shot shell.
And after your review of the scene, where were your items 2 through 7 located?
After reviewing the crime scene diagram, I was aware of the marker numbers that those were recovered from, and then reviewing that diagram, it's my understanding that those items 2 through 7, the 300 blackout caliber cartridge cases, were located around or near the body of Margaret Murdaugh.
All right, and I'm referring now to your items 9 and 10, States 33 and 34. Where were those after your review of the crime scene diagram? Where were those identified and retrieved from?
Those appear to be in or around the storage room area near the kennels.
Thank you. I'm putting these two up on the screen. Mr. Greer, are these the items you just testified to having examined?
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay, thank you. Now, right now we're identifying a number of items. Is it, would it be fair to say that we're going to go over your results then at the conclusion of the identification?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right, referring to item State's Exhibit number 4, your item number 22, would you please direct your attention to that?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm handing you what's been marked. Jim. Handing you what's been marked as and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 4. Please take a look at this firearm. Let me know if you're familiar with it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this firearm is unloaded. It's safe for me to handle. I will keep it pointed in a safe direction here. I'm going to look for some of those identifying marks that I placed on this shotgun. Yes, sir, I do recognize this shotgun.
All right, tell us what that gun is.
This shotgun was determined to be one Benelli model Super Black Eagle 3 semi-automatic shotgun in 12 gauge with a serial number of U573210E17.
Thank you. Was there anything that accompanied State's Exhibit number 4?
Yes, sir.
What were included with it?
Also submitted with that firearm was an accessory, which was the sling, and one unfired Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch 12-gauge shot shell, and one unfired Winchester Super X Game Load 16-gauge shot shell.
Now, I think you just testified that 12 gauge. This shotgun is what gauge?
That is 12-gauge shotgun.
And I think you just mentioned that loaded in it was a 16 gauge. Could you explain what the process was ejecting? Is that the proper gauge for that shotgun?
No, sir. That the unfired ammunition, as it was submitted to me, was received in another package. I did not remove it from that firearm. However, a 16 gauge would not be correct for use in that firearm.
Did you have to manually remove it from the shotgun?
It was already removed when I received it.
I'm handing you what's been marked as states and entered into evidence as States Exhibit 250, sled item 8. Item 8, sled item 8, but states item 250. Take a moment to review it and let me know if you are aware of what it is.
Yes, sir. I recognize this as sled item 8.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to examine and review that item?
I did.
What did you determine it was or is?
Sled item 8, States Exhibit number 250, was determined to be one fired bullet, and that was listed as a near tire impression at marker 8.
Okay. And you were able to do further analysis, which will get you the results to determine its weight?
Yes, sir.
Very good. So as you testified before, this would be the bullet minus the casing that it originally came in. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is just one fired bullet.
And that's what it looks like when it doesn't have the back part on it?
Yes, sir. That's just a bullet without any cartridge case attached to it.
All right, Mr. Greer, I'm going to direct your attention to States Exhibit number 20, sled item 14. This is entered into evidence already. I'm going to hand it to you and ask if you conducted an exam of this item.
Yes, sir, I did.
All right, what were the results?
Sled item 14, which is States Exhibit 20, was determined to be 24 birdshot pellets listed as from dog food storage room.
And can you repeat it for my purposes? These were pellets from what?
Yes, sir. 24 birdshot pellets listed as from dog food storage room.
You testified before and you presented what a shotgun shell looks like. Would that be what's inside a shotgun shell ultimately?
Yes, sir. That would be an example of birdshot pellets that would be loaded into a shotgun shell.
Mr. Greer, I'm going to direct your attention to what's been entered into evidence as States Exhibit 76, sled item number 12. You have an opportunity. Did you have an opportunity to review this item after you take a look at it?
Yes, sir.
All right, tell us what it is, please.
Sled item 12 states Exhibit 76 was determined to be one fired bullet listed as from bedding inside doghouse.
I'm going to direct your attention to State's Exhibit 102, slide item 11. Already entered in evidence. Please take a look at this item. Let me know if you're familiar with its contents.
Yes, sir. This is sled item 11, State's Exhibit 102, and that was determined to be one fired bullet jacket fragment, 3 bullet jacket fragments, and 1 piece of lead, listed as defect in ground gravel, marker 13. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to refer to what's been identified as State's Exhibit 109. Sled item 137. Please review this item and let me know if you recognize it and if you performed an examination of it.
Yes, sir. This is sled item 137, State's Exhibit 109, and it was determined to be 1 piece of lead listed as from hair on the item 92 dress.
At this point, State would move for 109 to be admitted into evidence. Moving on to State's Exhibit 110, which is sled items 67 and 68. I'll direct your attention to that. They've been marked as, for identification purposes, as State's item 110.
No objection.
All right, Mr. Greer, I'm going to show you what's been admitted as evidence as 110. If you would, please take a look at it. Let me know if you've recognized it and performed an examination on it.
Yes, sir. State's Exhibit 110 represents 2 sled items. Sled item 67, which I examined, determined to be 48 birdshot pellets listed as from left shoulder and head of Paul Murdaugh at autopsy. And sled item 68 was 1 piece of plastic listed as from left shoulder and head of Paul Murdaugh at autopsy.
When you say where it's from, that's because that's what was identified on the item when it was submitted to you for review?
Yes, sir. That's solely based on how it was logged into our system by the submitting personnel.
All right, I'm going to refer your attention now to 3 items just to speed along the process a little bit. States 111, 112, and 113 marked as identification purposes. Sled items 69, 66, and 104. So if you please take a look at those in your items in your report, I'll be right with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break for lunch. We will Resume in 1 hour and 15 minutes. 2:45.
All right.
And our other partners. The 11 Alive Storm Trackers. It's how you see weather happening now across Metro Atlanta.
These severe storms are now closing in.
We could be talking about damaging winds, hail, and
how you can plan ahead by knowing what's coming overhead.
Heavy storms are rolling in.
Expect pop-up thunderstorms and rain all day long.
And how you'll be weather ready wherever you are.
We expect at any moment a tornado warning could be issued.
Happening now at 12:30, Atlanta police are working to figure out who shot a 12-year-old boy and his dad this morning in Buckhead. 11 Alive's Brittany Klein-Peter live near the scene on Lenox Road, right near East Paces Ferry. Brittany, you've been out there talking to people who live in that community. What are they saying about what they saw and heard?
Many of the residents tell me at the 3200 apartment complex that crime is not very common and that most of the people that live here are families. Police, though, say that this all unfolded around 5 a.m. this morning at this complex when someone pulled into the gate and started shooting. The 31-year-old father and his 12-year-old son were both hurt in that shooting. They remain in stable condition at the hospital. One resident told me he heard the gunshots and then saw a group of people running.
Like a machine gun.
Did it wake you up?
Yeah, woke me up, yeah.
So when you looked out your window, what did you see?
I seen about 5 or 6 guys running to their cars and driving off.
I was just shocked. I was more shocked than anything.
Yeah.
Like just trying to figure out, like, last night, we just got in the house, like, not even so many hours ago.
Right now, police have not released any motive or suspect in this case. They did tell us, though, that there were 2 vehicles that pulled out of the complex shortly after those gunshots were fired, and they are looking into those 2 vehicles. That last check, though, they said they believe this father and son were targeted in the shooting.
Brittany, thank you. A live look outside now in Sandy Springs. We got some blue skies for the first time this week. Glad to see it. Plenty of sunshine in store for your Friday heading into the weekend. Let's check in with meteorologist Melissa Nord. Finally sunny. Sheesh, that was a cloudy, rainy pattern.
I know. It's like, what is this bright thing in the sky we haven't seen in about a week since last Saturday? I would say we had the last really bright day outside. It's gorgeous when you look outside, but you notice how the camera's kind of shaking. There's some gusty winds in the place of the rain that we got from yesterday. So it is chilly. It's breezy out there, and we're going to see temperatures this afternoon for most of us around the metro stuck below 50 degrees. 46 right now in Atlanta. Northwest winds are gusting 15 miles per hour, gusting to 29 currently, gusting to 26 in Marietta, 24 in Rome, and even gusting to 25 right now out by Lake Lanier in Gainesville. So it's going to stay breezy the rest of the afternoon and chilly. And what's happening behind the front, there's the rain from yesterday and overnight. Behind the front, there's this drier air mass that's rushing in with these gusty winds. So this is going to keep us cool, chilly, breezy for today. And we'll have a chilly start to the weekend as well before we start to see a nice warming trend kicking into high gear. Right now, it feels like 40 in town, 34 in Marietta, 30 in Blairsville. Rest of the afternoon, temperature is going to climb up another few degrees to the mid and upper 40s around the metro, and we will see as we look at the afternoon those wind chills staying in the 40s. Now, coming up, it's cold overnight, but then next week there is a big warming trend coming. We'll talk about how many days we'll see the 60s back in North Georgia in just a bit. Aisha?
All right, Melissa, thank you. We'll see you soon. Developing now in Cobb County, we are working to learn more about a 4-hour SWAT standoff overnight in Powder Springs. This all happened at a home on Robertswood Drive, right off Powder Springs Road near Barrett Parkway. Police confirmed to us a little after 11 o'clock last night a suspect wanted for aggravated assault did not come out of the home. SWAT was called in. We're told the suspect was taken into custody and no one was hurt. Happening today, visitation for a 13-year-old boy who lost his life to gun violence in Atlanta. Today, family will begin to say their goodbyes to 13-year-old Deshaun DeBose. Police say he was killed last month outside the Cascade skating rink in Southwest Atlanta. His family tells 11 Alive he was an innocent bystander. Deshaun was a 7th grade honor roll student at Drew Charter School. His family says he was quiet, loved spending time studying and playing video games. They will remember him as humble and gentle. Right now, police haven't named any suspects in Deshaun's death, but they did release these surveillance photos of some young people at the skating rink that they want to question them. We do have them posted online on 11alive.com for you to take a closer look at those photos. New details now about an 8 p.m. curfew now in effect for kids and teens in Fulton County. Commissioners say it is a step to try to cut down on youth violence and crime while setting an example for all 15 cities within the county line. So because the cities, they set their own curfews, right? The new curfew here we're talking about, it only applies to a small unincorporated part of the county. It's sandwiched right between Fulton Industrial Boulevard and the Cobb County line. The county estimates fewer than 1,000 people live there. But here is the previous curfew that applied to teens 17 and younger. It ran from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. Fridays and Saturdays. The new curfew applies to anyone 16 and under. It will be in effect 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday, it's still midnight. Right now, the Atlanta City Council is considering its own revised curfew. Councilmember Keisha Waits, she has been previously pushing a 7 p.m., then an 8 p.m. curfew. Yesterday, she released a statement thanking Fulton County for passing theirs and says she is open to a 10 p.m. curfew in Atlanta. It is a video you will only see on 11 Alive. Gwinnett County Police sending out a new warning to anyone who thinks it's fun to just point lasers at helicopters. Look at how fast they can track you down. This is video from Saturday as Air One was patrolling Duluth. The helicopter took a direct hit from a green laser, blinding the pilot in the cockpit. Police say this could cause a crash and it puts everyone in danger.
It could definitely be very catastrophic, not just for the pilots and the agency, but for citizens that are near the incident.
The technology inside the helicopter you see right here shows the street names, the zones of the city. Officers inside the helicopter were able to get an address, and officers on the ground were at that front door in 9 minutes. One person was charged, and police say that should be a reminder. Crimes like these come with some serious consequences. All right, we remember flu season got off to a real wild start here in Georgia. The numbers of weekly cases, they are starting to drop off, but we still got a little ways to go. So if you've already had the flu or maybe even the respiratory virus RSV, you might be kind of chilling, thinking you don't have to worry, you won't get it again. As Jerry Carnes verifies for us, that might not be the case.
It's bad enough to get the aches and pains of the flu once or the coughing and wheezing of RSV. But can you catch those illnesses twice in the same cold and flu season? Let's verify. Our sources are Dr. Harry Hyman of Georgia State University's School of Public Health and Dr. Preeti Jaggi, infectious disease specialist with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and Emory University. When you get the flu, your body develops protection for the rest of that season from the strain of the flu you got. But Dr. Hyman reminds us there's more than one strain.
If I get influenza A, the strains, and I get over that, but then 3 weeks later, I get influenza B, or I get exposed to influenza B, I'm still susceptible to that.
According to the Centers for Disease Control, most people get respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, by the age of 2. Dr. Jaggi points out that just like with the flu, there are different strains of RSV.
It's not probably as common with RSV as it would be with influenza, but there are definitely different strains of these different viruses, and you can get them again in the same season.
Scientists agree that if you're reinfected with RSV, the symptoms are not as severe. So we can verify it's true. You can get the flu or RSV twice in the same season. So don't assume one bout with an illness means your fight is over.
We're committed to answering any questions you have. If you see a claim online that you want us to verify, just send us an email to verify@11alive.com or text verify to the number you see right there on your screen. Still ahead, the push for police reform. President Biden and the Congressional Black Caucus say they agree on a path moving forward. Details next.
It's how you see weather happening now across Metro Atlanta.
These severe storms are now closing in.
We could be talking about damaging winds, hail, and
How you can plan ahead by knowing what's coming overhead.
heavy storms are rolling in.
Expect pop-up thunderstorms and rain all day long.
And how you'll be weather ready wherever you are.
We expect at any moment a tornado warning could be issued.
The 11 Alive Storm Trackers. It's how you'll be prepared and stay safe. 11 Alive Morning News.
We began with breaking news this morning.
Is where you know what's happening now.
11 Alive is live on the scene.
Where you can confidently plan ahead.
This severe weather is intensifying.
By knowing what's coming overhead. And we're Atlanta's traffic expert.
We've seen delays almost 30 minutes worth of
Helps you get there on time. Every time. 11 Alive Morning News is where you start the day prepared. Watch weekdays 5 to 7 a.m.
If you see breaking news or severe weather near you, snap it and share it using Near Me on the 11 Alive News app. Want to verify if something's true or false? Record your question and send it. Download the 11 Alive News app to use Near Me.
11 Alive News at 11 p.m. is where you find out what's happening now across Metro Atlanta.
We begin tonight with breaking news out of Cobb County, where a neighborhood is now...
Where you stay a step ahead of severe weather.
Our storm risk has now been upgraded to a...
And the only place where you can verify fact versus fiction.
11 Alive can verify that claim is false.
11 Alive News at 11 p.m. Where you end the day ready to take on tomorrow.
Weather can't run from the 11 Alive Thunder Truck. A mobile weather center with the power and speed to chase down the strongest storms and bring you on-the-ground conditions. The 11 Alive Thunder Truck, sponsored by Landmark Dodge.
Fighting social inequality is on all of us. That's why 11 Alive is committed to sharing diverse perspectives, exposing injustice, and finding solutions. Voices for Equality, sponsored by Georgia Power and our other partners.
The 11 Alive Storm Trackers. It's how you see weather happening now across Metro Atlanta.
These severe storms are now closing in.
We could be talking about damaging winds, hail, and
How you can plan ahead by knowing what's coming overhead.
heavy storms are rolling in.
Expect pop-up thunderstorms and rain all day long.
And how you'll be weather ready wherever you are.
Just into our newsroom in the last few hours, China has a new response to the U.S. military about this balloon spotted hovering over the U.S. Today, the Beijing Foreign Ministry released a statement saying it is a civilian airship used for weather research that blew off course. The military has been monitoring the balloon since it was reported yesterday in Montana, about 6,000 miles from China. Chinese leaders say they will keep communicating with the U.S. to properly handle the situation. President Biden is continuing conversations about police reform. He and Vice President Kamala Harris met yesterday with members of the Congressional Black Caucus to talk about policing in America. It comes in the wake of the killing of 29-year-old Tyree Nichols in Memphis. Here's NBC's Bree Jackson with what came out of their meeting.
The death of Tyree Nichols at the hands of police officers is renewing calls for change.
My hope is this dark memory spurs some action that we've all been fighting for.
President Biden meeting with members of the Congressional Black Caucus to discuss getting federal legislation on policing through a divided Congress.
This is going to require all of us, including Republicans, to get across the finish line.
Democrats pushing to revive the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Senator Tim Scott, the lead Republican negotiator, referenced the bill in a tweet, calling it a non-starter.
We need more training on de-escalation. Yes, we need more resources.
Lawmakers say they're willing to work towards finding common ground.
I know that when a conservative Republican starts talking about policing in America, some people seem to just turn the channel. That's wrong.
Black caucus leaders say after reaching an agreement with the administration Thursday, they are releasing a legislative package in the days ahead.
We're not drawing lines in the sand because we know that Tyree Nichols' life is worth fighting for, and so many others.
Advocates say Congress must act on police reform while urging President Biden to make that case during his State of the Union address Tuesday. In Washington, Bree Jackson for NBC News.
Georgians are one step closer to getting some money back from the state. The Georgia House just signed off on a rare property tax break. That's just one of two major tax breaks on the table right now. So the second is an income tax break. It's going to give $250 back to single filers. And if it passes the state legislature, married couples filing together will get $500. The one-time only property tax break will give an additional $18,000 homestead exemption for homeowners.
I think you spread that across the population, particularly in light of what we're all experiencing with rising inflation. Cost of living has dramatically gone up over the past year to 18 months. I think it could really provide a benefit for a lot of people.
Experts say the money will likely start reaching taxpayers this summer and into the fall. Need to know news for car owners. Depending on your car's make and model, you might have a harder time getting insurance for it now, and it is all because of this.
So first, they left my steering wheel lock sitting on the seat.
After a TikTok trend exposed Kias and Hyundais as being easier to steal, insurance companies are saying enough is enough. State Farm confirms it is no longer issuing new policies for certain models from those car makers, and that is because thefts are too frequent in Georgia. Existing customers will still, they're going to be covered. They're fine. Progressive says that it's also limiting new policies, but it's not clear where. So if you can get an insurance policy, the automakers are offering some help. Starting next month, Hyundai is pushing out a software update to their affected vehicles, and Hyundai and Kia, they're providing free steering wheel locks to some customers, and we have more on that on 11alive.com. A live look in Boston as the Northeast faces a fierce Arctic blast this weekend. That's a pretty shot, but I'm sure it doesn't feel cute. It has potential to bring the coldest wind chills to the region in decades. NBC's Emily Ikeda is there right now with a look at how millions are getting ready.
Hey there. Well, right now it's about just above 20 degrees here in Boston. The wind is packing a punch as well, but this is actually the warmest it's going to be for the rest of the day as temperatures are set to topple every hour into dangerously low levels. You can see it's pretty quiet here in Boston. Schools across the city canceled as officials are warning people to stay out of what could be some of the coldest weather parts of the region have seen in decades. It will feel like minus 20 in Chicago today. Tomorrow in Boston, wind chill of 30 below. And get this, a jaw-dropping minus 60 wind chill in northern Maine, where the National Weather Service is calling it an epic generational Arctic outbreak. As I mentioned before, schools canceled here in Boston. They declared a cold weather emergency. Schools also shuttered in Buffalo. They're using signs there to warn people of the danger to come, the potentially life-threatening cold. And that city's just coming off of weeks later a deadly blizzard. Now, as we see this Arctic air move in, the South is still thawing out from its week-long icy storm that claimed the lives of at least 8 people and left a tangled mess of power lines and trees. Austin Energy telling its customers it can't say when to expect widespread power restoration. Now, back here in Boston, I did mention we're bracing for that bone-chilling wind chill of 30 below tomorrow. But to put that in perspective, that's actually fairly mild when you look at what nearby New Hampshire at Mount Washington is looking forward to. Minus 100 wind chill paired with 100-mile-per-hour winds. So I suppose I should be saying it could be worse. I'll send it back to you guys. And yes, it is very cold up there, and you'll notice the core of the cold. These are the current feels like temperatures across the country. Feels like 40 in Atlanta, but you see this red color right there? That's where the wind chills drop to 30 degrees below zero and even beyond that. So some very cold air, but where's that heading? That's heading into the northeast. We're going to get a modified form of a cooler air mass moving in for the weekend. So the really cold air will again stay up in the northeast, and we will not see the brunt of that cold move across the south. Tomorrow's high temperature, though, is going to be chilly, upper 40s to around 50. For this afternoon, a change from yesterday, a change from the whole week. We have bright sunshine back out. It is a little bit breezy and chilly out there. Temperatures right now are in the mid 40s in town. You notice here one of our live cameras looking up north from the top side of the perimeter, up 400. It's shaking a little bit. That's because we have some of these breezy winds, gusts to about 25 miles per hour across North Georgia, but bright blue skies across all of the northern half of the Peach State. 51 in Athens currently. It's 37 in Blairsville, 42 in Marietta, and 49 in Peachtree City. Wind gusts, again, 25, 30 miles per hour in a few cases. We're going to keep these around this afternoon as that cooler, drier air builds in. However, I do think those gusty winds will lax. They'll calm down in the overnight, so it'll just be plain cold outside for us to start off your weekend tomorrow morning. Currently feels like 34 in Marietta and 33 in Canton. So here's the big picture. That really cold air, I mean, the core of it's up in the northeast, but it is turning colder to start the weekend. But as we head towards the second half of the weekend, this dome of colder air is going to retreat further east, and that's going to allow a warming trend to return to North Georgia. So a brief cold snap. It's nothing near records, nothing really impressive for us. It'll just feel like wintertime outside. And then as we get into the second half of the weekend, it's already gone, and we talk about some warmer spring-like weather moving in. This afternoon, mostly sunny skies, mid 40s, upper 40s. You factor in those gusty winds, yeah, it's going to feel more like 40 degrees outside for a lot of us this afternoon. Then overnight, the winds will calm down, turns cold in a hurry. Tomorrow morning, we'll be waking up below the freezing mark in the upper 20s to low 30s. So a cold night ahead with those clear skies, but tomorrow will be a chilly but mostly sunny day outside. Dry weather that's in today is going to stick around for tomorrow. 48 the high temperature, mostly sunny skies overall tomorrow with just some afternoon clouds building in. And then by Sunday, we'll jump up by about 10 degrees. So as I mentioned, it's a brief cold snap. By Sunday, it's already moving out of here. Sunday morning's low, 35, afternoon 57, and then watch what happens with these temperatures next week. We're going to see 60s moving back in starting Monday. So here's the sunshine throughout most of the day tomorrow, just a few clouds in the afternoon. Sunday, the clouds keep thickening up, but it's not going to prevent us from seeing a warmer picture to the second half of the weekend. We'll go from the upper 40s to the upper 50s in a matter of a day. Then next week, well above average by about 10 degrees. We'll see those high temperatures climbing into the 60s Monday and Tuesday. Next 5 days, dry weather sticks around, so that's something to really celebrate. Giving it 10s on the wazometer Monday, Tuesday. Some showers do move back in ahead of our next frontal system mid to latter half of next week. Aisha?
All right, Melissa, thank you. Right now, families in Sandy Springs are rallying around a gymnastics facility on the verge of closure. What the city says it needs to do to keep the doors open next.
Was at Cobb County, where a neighborhood is now
where you stay a step ahead of severe weather.
Our storm risk has now been upgraded to a...
And the only place where you can verify fact versus fiction.
11 Alive can verify that claim is false.
11 Alive News at 11 p.m. Where you end the day ready to take on tomorrow.
Weather can't run from the 11 Alive Thunder Truck. A mobile weather center with the power and speed to chase down the strongest storms and bring you on-the-ground conditions. The 11 Alive Thunder Truck, sponsored by Landmark Dodge.
Fighting social inequality is on all of us. That's why 11 Alive is committed to sharing diverse perspectives, exposing injustice, and finding solutions. Voices for Equality, sponsored by Georgia Power and our other partners.
The 11 Alive Storm Trackers. It's how you see weather happening now across Metro Atlanta.
These severe storms are now closing in.
We could be talking about damaging winds, hail, and
how you can plan ahead by knowing what's coming overhead.
Heavy storms are rolling in.
Expect pop-up thunderstorms and rain all day long.
And how you'll be weather ready wherever you are.
We expect at any moment a tornado warning could be issued.
The 11 Alive Storm Trackers. It's how you'll be prepared and stay safe. 11 Alive Morning News.
We began with breaking news this morning.
Is where you know what's happening now.
11 Alive is live on the scene.
Where you can confidently.
In recent years, we've witnessed the black girl magic of Simone Biles and Gabby Douglas. The sport of gymnastics is seeing a boost of interest, especially in young people of color, right? And with so many young aspiring gymnasts hoping to achieve bigger dreams, a local coach hopes to have a hand in their training while fighting to stay in business. Gina White tells 11 Alive she fell in love with flips early in life. The 13-year gymnast and Spelman College alum now coaches kids in the Hamming Park Gym in Sandy Springs. But she ran into some challenges right after opening the Phoenix Gymnastics Center in 2019. And now she says she has to pay the city $7,500 or shut down. With nearly 300 other gymnasts on the bars and beams, White hopes to keep all of their dreams alive.
Anybody can be a gymnast, anybody can go to the Olympics, and I think that, you know, being a woman of color here running this type of program, yes, all the other girls that, you know, are girls of color, they can see too that, you know, I can, maybe if I'm not an Olympian, I can run my own gymnastics program and I can pour into kids too in their communities.
The city of Sandy Springs sent 11 Alive a statement saying if Phoenix paid the rent owed to the city, they would allow them to finish out classes for those who had already paid. White says she hopes to raise the money by next week to present it to the city of Sandy Springs.
And I want the citizens of Tulare County to sleep a little safer tonight, knowing that these baby-killing murderers are off the street. And that we used every resource possible to make sure that we brought the justice to the families and peace to the community of Tulare County.
And that was a young mother on the 911 call?
No.
Okay, that was a neighbor.
There is a trailer attached to the property. There's a small trailer that is up the driveway. There was 2 females in that trailer with the subject that was shot in the doorway, and I believe he was victim number 1. She hid inside the trailer and called 911, and that's who you heard. She indicated that her boyfriend, if you heard, it's difficult, but we're putting it in the press packet, the actual words that were spoken on the 911. She indicates that my boyfriend's been shot in the stomach. Please help. Please hurry. But that is not the teenage mother. The teenage mother, once she realizes gunfire is taking place, grabs her small infant and runs out the door, as to which you saw.
Sure. Was there anything of value from the CDCR searches, or were any confirmed connections to Nuestra Familia?
Yes. I know it.
I know you're not.
I just can't tell you it. But I'm hoping to imply here that with that many searches being done at that many prisons in the state prison system, that it's a clear indicator that there is a hard networking of gang members, violent gang members, working and operating in the state of California, all over the state of California. Yes, sir.
Which direction did the mother run? Is it to the north, the back of the property, or?
It's to the southeast.
Towards the front.
She's running towards the street. That cyclone fence that you see, they usually have a rolling gate, I believe, where cars come in and they roll it in behind her. What we believe, as you see, she's not able to jump that high fence with the weight of the baby, but she knows she has to get that baby to safety. She leans up over the fence and lays her child on the ground, as you saw. She can't get over that wooden fence. She goes to the next shortest fence. As she hops over that fence, the baby murderers, the child murderers, slowly walk towards her, advancing, and shoot her in the street.
So the video we saw is from the corner of that house?
Yes. Which has been enhanced through FBI assistance. We didn't even know that we actually had it initially. We initially believed that the system was inoperable. We had to do some work to recover that. And we weren't willing to release that at the time that we had it. One of the reasons for that is because, look, I have to compliment. I know you hear this when law enforcement gets up in front of the stage, but let me tell you, bringing a case like this together in less than 30 days, less than 20 days, coming together with everyone that you see in this room, it's unheard of. I almost feel as God had his hand on here protecting these two innocent children, to say that justice has to come. We sat in multiple briefings. I sat in multiple briefings, sometimes many a day, and that information would change sometimes hourly. Sometimes hourly. As you can imagine, when things like this happen, we develop theories and what it may look like. We would have a list of about 20 theories that dwindle down to one. And when you've gotten rid of everything else, you're left with fact. And that's where we're here today. I'm happy that we were able to put these two men behind bars. I can tell you last night, I got no sleep. None. Yeah, that's not true. About an hour and a half. I went to bed at 12:15, and I woke up a little after 2. And so I came in this morning ready for justice to be served. And as I talked to the other men and women in the room, they were the same. They were ready. We were confident in our case, and they all got very little sleep. From our federal agents to everyone who served the search warrant. And I prayed for everybody this morning that they would come home safe. And I am thankful that our ATF agent reacted in the manner in which he was trained to defeat that threat. And that's what he did. I'm also thankful that the murderer survived surgery. Because I'm hoping the death penalty moratorium is lifted, and at some point both of these men will face death. With that, we'll conclude. We will provide you with a
All right, the sheriff there calling on for the death penalty as he come back there in California for these two suspects there. And the sheriff there mincing no words there to California Governor Gavin Newsom, saying that they did their job and now it's for the governor to do the job for justice for these two suspects in the massacre of 6 people last month in Central California. Were arrested early today, one after a gun battle, all according to the sheriff there. A 25-year-old man was taken into custody without incident, and a 35-year-old man was wounded in the shootout with federal agents. And we were getting that update from officials right there. And of course, bringing it to you right here on Live Now from Fox. Hi, everyone. Mike Page here. Thanks so much again for joining us here. We are into a new hour right here, and we want to continue to bring you the top updates and top stories across the country. That one was a major update, and I'm glad that we were able to bring it to you live, raw, and always unfiltered right here. Another top story that we are following for you is the Chinese spy balloon. We will be getting another update coming up in about 15 minutes, all coming from Fox News' Greg Pelcott. Again, that's coming in about 15 minutes, but we also have some other news here to share with you regarding this story as well. Take a look at this from the National Weather Service of Kansas City, saying that we have had several reports across northwest Missouri of a large balloon visible on the horizon. It is now visible from our office in Pleasant Hill in the KC Metro. We have confirmed that it is not a National Weather Service weather balloon there. So many people continuing to look up into the skies there, especially if you are in the middle of the country, because that is what the Department of Defense says was the latest location of this Chinese spy balloon. Ahead of Greg Pelcott, I want to play out just some of the highlights from earlier of this Pentagon briefing that we got earlier this morning.
So we'll just leave it at that. Jennifer.
General Ryder, who is controlling this balloon right now?
Again, we know that this is a Chinese balloon, but beyond that, I'm not going to have specifics.
But is it, you say that it's moving eastward and it's over the continental U.S., it's not over Montana anymore. Is the Chinese government controlling the movement of the balloon, or is it just floating with airstreams?
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm not going to go into any specific intelligence that we may have. Again, we know this is a Chinese balloon and that it has the ability to maneuver, but I'll just leave it at that.
And once it's over a body of water, will you shoot it down?
Again, right now we're monitoring the situation closely, reviewing options, but beyond that, I'm not going to have any additional information. We go to Tony.
One quickie on the balloon. Can you confirm the photos that are out there that this is not the man in the moon and that is the actual balloon?
Thanks, Tony. So certainly aware of photos being posted online. I'm not going to get into the business of confirming whether or not those are, where those photos come from. Again, I can tell you that the U.S. government, NORAD, is monitoring this closely, and we will continue to review options.
How close was the U.S. to was the president to ordering a shoot down of the balloon?
Yeah, so again, I'm not going to get into internal discussions within the White House. Again, right now, we assess that there is no threat, a physical threat or military threat to people on the ground. So we're continuing to monitor, and we'll just leave it at that. Thank you. Let me go to Janie, and then we'll go to Rio.
Thanks, General. Welcome to home. I have two questions. Is come on? Okay. In response to Secretary Austin's recent remarks that more U.S. strategic assets will come to South Korea, North Korea warned of stronger provocations in the near future. What is your comment on this?
Well, it's certainly not surprising given North Korea's track record of making bellicose statements. Again, what we're focused on is on preserving peace, security, and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. And so Secretary Austin's visit was an opportunity to, again, reaffirm our strong and close alliance with the Republic of Korea. And so that will remain our focus, is on working with South Korea and other nations in the region to deter aggression and ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific.
One more. South Korea has announced that it will be test the high-powered monster ballistic missile with nuclear warhead level. This is a defense against North Korea's nuclear warhead. How do you agree with this?
I'm sorry, Janie, I missed the first part of your question. Can you repeat that?
South Korea has announced that it will be test a high-powered monster ballistic missile with nuclear warhead levels. This is the defense against
I don't have anything on that. I'd refer you to the government of South Korea. Thank you. Let me go to Rio, and then I'll come back over here.
Okay, thank you very much. Two questions on the Chinese balloon. So there is a speculation that the Chinese balloon flew over Japanese airspace before reaching the U.S., continental U.S. Can you confirm that?
I've seen those press reports. Again, as we acknowledged in our statement that we posted last night, we have seen this type of balloon activity elsewhere before. But again, I'm not going to get into intelligence, and I'm not going to have any further information to provide.
Secondly, how will this incident affect the Secretary's future engagement with Chinese counterpart to maintain the open lines of the communication?
I think we've been very clear that we're always open to maintaining an open line of communication with the PRC, and in that regard, nothing has changed. Thank you. Let me go to Phil, and then I'll come over to Qasim.
Is the position of the balloon classified?
Phil, right now, what we're not going to do is get into a hour-by-hour location of the balloon. Again, we're monitoring it closely. As I mentioned, right now, it's over the center of the continental United States. That's about as specific as I'm going to get.
But I understand it might be inconvenient, but does the public not have a right to know if the balloon is over their state?
The public certainly has the ability to look up in the sky and see where the balloon is. Thank you. Qasim?
General, you said the balloon is maneuverable. So does that mean that it's not drifting?
So the balloon is maneuverable. Clearly, it's violated U.S. airspace. And again, we've communicated that fact to the PRC.
If possible, can you tell us if the balloon, when it entered the U.S. airspace, has it changed its course in any way?
The balloon has changed its course, which is, again, why we're monitoring it. But that's about as specific as I can get. Thank you. Go to Matt.
So you said at this point the balloon doesn't pose any risks to citizens. How is it that the U.S. can assess that, given that the balloon is at such an altitude, without actually getting eyes on it up close and assessing the equipment that's on board? And secondly, are there any alternatives being considered to shooting it down? Is there any option to take this balloon out of the sky intact to maybe get a better look at that equipment?
Yeah, so again, this is a surveillance balloon. However, operating at about 60,000 feet. Clearly, we did a very close assessment in terms of what it's doing. And as I mentioned, military commanders have assessed that there is no physical or military threat to people on the ground. And so in that regard, we'll continue to monitor. In terms of
All right, that was just some of the highlights from earlier at today's big Pentagon briefing as they continued to give the latest updates regarding the Chinese spy balloon that continues to travel now in the middle of the country right here and continues to make its way eastward. Let's bring in the very latest right here from Fox News' Greg Palcott, who has been covering this story for us and really giving us an eye on what the Chinese are saying about it as well.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, that's right. China initially today tried to dodge questions, saying, hey, they would never send anything up that would violate any country's airspace or sovereignty. But by the end of the day, I think they figured out their goose was cooked, and they did, in fact, say that it was their balloon, but that it was simply a civilian balloon, had nothing to do with spying. Let me give you a quote from an English language statement that they posted on their website. It is a civilian airship used for research, mainly meteorology. From its planned course. I think that is an understatement. The Pentagon has knocked that down. It has flatly said this is not a weather balloon. This is a spy balloon, a surveillance balloon, and it was intentional, and it did, in fact, violate our sovereignty. What this has caused over the State Department is a big ruckus. Secretary of State Blinken was set to leave for Beijing tonight. He was going to be in Beijing on Sunday and Monday, meeting with President Xi and others. And again, State Department has also criticized the actions of China and said flatly that this trip would be postponed. Well, we've heard indefinitely, or at least when a time is more reliable. I guess, Mike, the optics of Biden being there on Sunday with that balloon possibly still traversing the United States would have been a bit too much to bear. Meanwhile, China and the U.S. both say that they're in contact with each other. I think they're trying to avert the worst case scenario, which is not any kind of an attack or anything from this balloon, but could be a necessary shoot down by the United States, which could have all sorts of dangerous ramifications, Mike.
Yeah, and Greg, a lot of people just wondering too, could this have been something that China just wanted to see, just maybe how much and how far they could get away with bringing the balloon into the U.S. airspace?
Yeah, analysts are really perplexed about this, Mike. The first thing I have to say, according to various reports, is that there are accounts in the past of China doing this, of sending up surveillance balloons that have gone across Hawaii, Guam, even the continental United States. It seems like this time what has tripped them up is that there's a lot more great amateur photographers on the ground, not just with iPhones, but with other digital cameras, and that's when it was picked up. And it seems to have forced the United States' the government's hand as well. As it's been reported, they've been aware of this balloon traveling towards the United States for a couple of days now. You almost get the feeling, Mike, that they were hoping that this would blow over. Maybe they would talk about it after.
Right, it looks like we did lose Greg Palcott there, but he was giving us the latest update there regarding that major story that we continue to update you right here on Live Now from Fox, everyone. And what we will do is, you know what? We do have Greg right back here. So sorry, Greg, the signal got a little messed up there, but we got you back there. But yeah, as you were saying there, you were talking about just how many were hoping maybe this would just blow over, literally.
Yeah, well, and that's conjecture on our part. But again, looking at the accounts that this has happened in the past and Washington's been a little bit more or quiet about it in the past. Maybe it is indeed because you got a lot of great amateur photographers on the ground. There were some great pictures, images shown in Montana of the balloon going over. And I'm just looking at my Twitter feed now. I can't vouch for these, but I've got pictures here that claim that they're now seeing the balloon over Kansas and Missouri. And in fact, we're hearing that from politicians as well. It's going west to east, and who knows, it could be hitting the East Coast maybe in the next couple of days. And I think one more time that is probably the reason that right now, at least, for Secretary of State Blinken to go to Beijing while that thing is still up in the air in U.S. airspace, it just wouldn't look right, Mike.
No, it wouldn't right there. So thank you, Greg Palcott, Fox News, breaking it all down for us with the very latest with this. We appreciate it right here on Live Now from Fox, as always, Greg.
Thanks, Mike.
And we always got you covered right here, bringing you the top stories and headlines from across the country. We are going to slide away for a quick 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. President Biden about to deplane Air Force One. He's going to be in Philadelphia to make remarks on the economy. We'll bring it to you when it happens right here on Live Now. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox, where we continue to bring you top stories and headlines right here. Attorney General Garland meeting today with the Ukrainian Prosecutor General. Let's listen right here on Live Now.
We have seized from Russian oligarchs for the rebuilding of Ukraine. Today, I am announcing that I have authorized the first ever transfer of forfeited Russian assets. These forfeited assets follow the announcement I made last April of the indictment of designated Russian oligarch Konstantin Malafeyev on charges of sanctions evasions. At that time, I also announced the seizure of millions of dollars from an account of a U.S. financial institution traced to Malafeyev's sanctions evasions. Yesterday, the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York ordered the funds forfeited to the United States. With my authorization today, the forfeited funds will next be transferred to the State Department to support the people of Ukraine. Before I turn over the podium to the Prosecutor General, I want to recognize the many Justice Department personnel involved in this work. Particularly, I want to thank the Justice Department's Task Force Klepto Capture and the War Crimes Accountability Team. I am incredibly proud of them. The Justice Department will continue to hold accountable Russian oligarchs and others whose criminal acts enable the Russian government to continue its unprovoked and unjust war in Ukraine. And we will continue to work closely with our international partners in support of investigation and prosecution of the atrocities. Investigations, but most of all, our partnership in the days ahead. Prosecutor General Kostin.
Thank you. Dear Attorney General Garland, good afternoon to everyone. Today, we are being hosted by Attorney General Garland to discuss our ongoing cooperation in holding Russia and its facilitators accountable for the aggressive war against my country, as well as for atrocities committed. We are grateful to the United States for its decisive efforts and support. Ukrainian people will never forget that. We particularly welcome resolute efforts at the legal front, including adoption of the pieces of legislation ensuring that the US will help us to hold criminals accountable. I am pleased to note that signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Department of Justice and my office has further contributed to yielding concrete results. Today, we are witnessing the authorization of transfer of the confiscated assets in the amount of $5.4 million to the State Department for the purpose of rebuilding war-ravaged Ukraine. The inherent part of the accountability is that the responsible party pays for the devastation that it caused. Therefore, the reparation of tremendous human and material damage to Ukraine and Ukrainian people is an important aspect in our quest for justice. This is a clear message. There will be no immunity and impunity for international crimes. At the same time, we all know that the crimes are committed by individuals, and only by holding them accountable, along with Russian Federation, we can consider justice served. We recognize that Ukraine has a primary obligation to end impunity for the most serious crimes of concern. Ensuring cooperation and partnership with international and national stakeholders is fundamental for our success. We commend Attorney General, War Crimes Accountability Team, and Klepto Capture Task Force for their assistance, ranging from strategic legal advice, support in investigation, and effective enforcement of sanctions regime. Therefore, Ukraine and the United States will continue to act jointly against planners, organizers, implementers, and facilitators of international crime in partnership and unity. Unity for justice.
Thank you. We'll now begin our technical conversations, which will continue most of the day. Thanks to everyone.
You're watching live now from Fox, everyone. As you can see right here, this is just moments away from President Biden to be making some remarks. We will be featuring that for you coming up as soon as it happens. Let's slide away for another quick 2-minute break. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks again for joining us here. Well, in Texas this past week, they were dealing with a deep freeze, and in parts of Austin, power outages into the thousands continue right now. Earlier today, officials gave the latest update on the power outages and the needs for thousands of Austins.
As I said in my inauguration speech last month, my goal is to do good by doing better, and I can assure you that going forward, we will do better. Let me now introduce the county judge for Travis County, Andy Brown.
Good morning, Travis County Judge Andy Brown. This week has been hard for all of us, especially our first responders, and I want to take a moment to thank our first responders for all the work that they have done over the past week and what they are still doing to get this community to a safe place. A lot of us have kids who have been out of school all week. I know I've got 2 little kids who have enjoyed the time at home this week, but I know that puts a strain on parents and caregivers across the county. We're all juggling life and work, and sometimes with storm damage or no power at our houses. Today, I'll focus on Travis County's recovery efforts and how do we best support our community as we try to get back to normal. I'll check on our frontline workers who have been working throughout this emergency to help keep our community safe. I'm going to visit a warming shelter to check in with folks who have been displaced by this event. Also, there has been a boil water notice issued in the Western Travis County Water District 10. Our county staff has a stockpile of water, and we are helping them get 20 pallets of water out to that area so that they have drinking water today. Throughout the day, I'll survey the extent of damage across the county and evaluate what resources we need for a robust and resilient recovery. This may include a disaster declaration. Whether Travis County and the City of Austin issue disaster declarations will depend on whether doing so will have a direct impact and benefit to our community, both in the City of Austin and Travis County. And of course, I will arrive at this decision consulting with the mayor and city manager and the frontline staffs in both the city and the county. I plan to make this decision by this afternoon, and just remember that it is my top priority to ensure that Travis County has a robust and resilient recovery to this storm as soon as possible. Thank you all very much. And I'll pass that over to City Manager Spencer Cronk.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you, Mayor. Again, City Manager Spencer Cronk, and I appreciate everyone being here with us this morning. As you know, we are committed to keeping you updated and informed as we continue this recovery effort to the historic winter event that we have all been experiencing this week. Our focus remains on getting power back on, clearing debris from roads, and helping everyone in our city return to normal. And as always, we want to make sure that everyone is safe. Austin Energy crews worked through the night and were able to restore power to thousands of customers and over 172,000 customers over the last, since the beginning of the event itself. And you'll hear more from that from Austin Energy's General Manager, Jackie Sargent. Austin Water remains relatively unaffected by the storm, and Austin Energy and Austin Water have worked closely together to ensure power is restored to pumps and lift stations. We're thankful for the warmer temperatures today, but warming centers will remain open for those needing assistance during this event. We will also have a lot of work ahead of us. We will continue to stay vigilant. We are working around the clock to make sure that we're addressing all the needs that our community has. I'm joined this morning by several city department leaders, including Austin Energy General Manager Jackie Sargent, Austin Water Director Shay Royals-Ralston, to provide updates and answer questions. But we also have EMS Assistant Chief Wes Hopkins, who's joining us, and our chief to talk about fire carbon monoxide safety, which is critically important right now. And we also have Ken Snipes from Austin Resource Recovery and James Snow from Public Works. But first, I'll turn it over to Jackie Sargent. Jackie?
Thank you, Spencer. Good morning. I'm Jackie Sargent, Austin Energy General Manager. I want to first say thank you for your patience as we continue to restore power. I know that this has been incredibly frustrating. As I have told you, we have had extensive damage from icing that has slowed our restoration efforts. Today, however, we are cautiously optimistic that we have turned a point overnight. As reflected on our outage map, the number of customers affected has begun to come down because our restoration numbers are going up while the number of repeated outages is going down. Fewer trees are falling, which means repeated outages have slowed down. As of 7 a.m., 49,193 additional customers have been restored since 5 p.m. yesterday, for a total of 182,159 customers restored since the beginning of this event. Still, right now, there are about 122,000 customers without power. Again, because of complicating factors, that number may continue to fluctuate as crews continue to work. Let me give you an example. One of the reasons a number of customers were restored is due to our work in conjunction with neighboring utility, resulting in an entire substation coming back online. However, we have had subsequent trip outages along the lines that substation feeds. Some of this is due to what we call cold load pickup. When power is restored, circuits can become overloaded because of large appliances and thermostats that have been left on prior to the outage. Here's how you can help. Customers currently without power can help us to avoid cold load pickup by turning off their thermostats, turning off or unplugging fixtures and appliances, and only leaving one light on to indicate when the power has come back on. Additionally, you can help us if crews knock on residents' doors in order to access Austin Energy equipment, such as energy equipment in a backyard or utility easement located on the resident's property. Austin Energy personnel will be clearly identifiable with badges and in Austin Energy vehicles. Please work with them on allowing access as needed. Please know that crews are working diligently to restore power to all customers. Austin Energy crews and mutual aid crews are helping with the restoration. We have more than 400 highly skilled professionals in the field doing restorations. Just this morning, we have had an additional 60 crew members from Bird Electric joining our efforts, and we are working to bring on additional contract crews. One last thing I want to reiterate is that unlike other parts of Texas and past storms, the ice storm brought us extensive moisture and ice accumulation, which had a direct impact on Austin's dense tree canopy and vegetation. The resulting ice that piled up on power lines, trees, and equipment added hundreds of pounds of ice and force that caused massive destruction. This caused electrical distribution lines and nearby vegetation to sag, break, or to come in contact with one another. Branches falling or leaning on power lines have contributed to the outages across our 437 square mile service territory. Despite Austin Energy's increased efforts in the last 2 years to trim trees and clear lines, nature pushed these trees to new breaking points. Huge trees have completely uprooted and fallen on power lines and made the roads impassable. A half inch of ice adds as much as 500 pounds to a power line and may cause it to break. Ice buildup on other electrical system equipment can cause components like switches to malfunction or break, requiring workarounds that take more time to make the repairs. As our Vice President of Field Operations, Elton Richards, shared yesterday, entire trees outside of our vegetation management zone have fallen over onto lines. Large trees away from the lines have broken off and fallen onto them. And communications infrastructure has impacted our lines as well. These events are well beyond what can be addressed with our vegetation management efforts. I want to thank the entire Austin Energy team who has been working 24/7 for their dedication and commitment to restore power as safely and quickly as possible. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Shay Rolson, Director of Austin Water. Throughout this event, Austin Water's water treatment plants have operated normally. We have not seen a spike in line breaks either on the private side or the public side, and storage levels have remained healthy. We have had a number of power outages at pump stations and lift stations, and I want to thank Austin Energy's crews for working very closely with us to prioritizing restoring power to those pump stations and lift stations. We continue to work those outages as needed. There are currently 3 pump stations and 16 wastewater lift stations out of power, and a number of those are operating on a number of our facilities are operating on generators. But at this time, water storage levels throughout the system are healthy. We had 2 small pockets of our water system that experienced a loss of water pressure due to power outages at pump stations. That's 15 homes in the Glen Lake subdivision and 24 homes on Mount Larson. We have communicated directly with those residents and delivered water, and we are working toward restoring service to those customers. We encourage all of our customers to conserve as we continue to restore normal power and operations to our pump stations and lift stations. As things thaw out, be sure that you check your homes for leaks. And if you see leaks out in the distribution system, please call Austin Water Dispatch to report those. Thank you.
You don't get our accounts audited. You don't have to submit an audit trail every year, an audited statement of your trust account to the bar. It's a reactionary. We're not proactive. So the bar only comes in and looks at a trust account when they're on notice of an infraction or a complaint. So a lot of times lawyers can be out of trust. They could borrow money. You know, it happens frequently in lawyer closing cases where lawyers are closing attorneys and they get money in from the sale of a house that's supposed to go to pay off a mortgage. Instead of paying off the mortgage, we have a lot of cases where the lawyers will continue to pay the monthly mortgage amount for a couple months, get used to those funds, maybe put it into a stock, see if it'll increase, and then they'll pay off the mortgage and satisfy the mortgage later on down the road. But what invariably happens is the stock doesn't appreciate, it goes down, and then they have a problem and they can't clear the mortgage.
All right, so that was a lot.
Sorry.
It was okay, though. No, but he answered your question, Michael. Let's do a round robin here. I'm just going to ask all of you really briefly before we have to sign off. What do you think the likelihood is? You can give me a percentage. What likelihood do you think the financial crimes are coming in? Gigi, I'll start with you.
I think they have to come in some capacity. I don't know about all of it because we'll be here until, you know, Christmas, but yeah, they got to come in as part of the motive. Yeah.
Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's going to lengthen this trial depending on the degree to which the stuff comes in. I don't think it's a yes or no. It's a how much.
Eric?
They're coming in. I agree with Gigi that it's going to be a question of how much. I think a significant portion is going to come in, but he'll throw a bone to the defense and not let it all in. I think this judge is going to let more in than he probably would. This probably is going to be one of his last cases. So he'd rather get a conviction and get himself reversed on appeal for letting too much in than getting reversed on appeal for not letting enough in.
Oh boy, yikes. That's a big decision for Judge Newman, who's really well respected around the state.
He is, because this is a testament on where our bar stands. We were really stained by him stealing almost $10 million. So our state was damaged, but our bar really suffered really bruised. And I think he's trying to reform what the public thinks of lawyers in our state.
Interesting. Well, Eric Bland, thanks so much for coming on. We hope you'll come back. Yeah, it was great to have you. Gigi, thanks so much. Michael, I'm going to throw it back to you after this break, but we appreciate everybody joining us for our Q&A session, and we'll be right back. I'm Anjanette Levy, and you've been watching Law and Crime, coming to you live from Walterboro, South Carolina.
back to Law and Crime, everybody. Michael Bryant here, and we are still on lunch in the Alec Murdaugh murder trial. I hope you had a chance to join us for the lunch with Anjanette Q&A. We're doing that every day. Kind of floats in terms of time depending on when the court actually takes their lunch, and they are still out probably for another 10 minutes or so. I want to bring you up to speed on one of the trial within a trial issues that was dealt with earlier today. Again, these are all witnesses testifying. President who took over for Russell Laffitte, who you may remember was kind of in cahoots with the defendant on a scam, financial scam. Not really good for a bank president to be involved in those, so he lost his job, and this witness took over. Let's go and take a look at this testimony.
Are you aware that on the day Maggie Murdaugh was murdered sometime the night of June the 7th. Are you aware that she was scheduled to meet your appraiser at Edisto on June the 8th?
No, sir.
The Moselle property was titled in Maggie Murdaugh's name in June of 2021, correct?
I believe that's correct.
The bank had filed mortgages on the property that predated whenever that was transferred to Ms. Murdaugh, right?
Yes, sir.
The Edisto Beach House was titled in jointly in Alec Murdaugh and Maggie Murdaugh's names, correct?
At one point.
Before her death.
I believe it was in her name solely at the time of her death.
You do? Are you sure about that?
I believe so.
And what information are you relying upon to say that?
Looking at the Colleton County deed records.
One second, Your Honor. Does the bank undergo routine FDIC audits? Palmetto State Bank?
Yes, sir.
And had Mr. Murdaugh's relationship with the bank ever been flagged in any audit conducted by the FDIC or their contract auditors?
To my knowledge, no.
You were just asked about whether or not Maggie was going to be meeting an appraisal at the Edisto property, but you've testified in no uncertain terms that that appraisal was to renew the mortgage that was already in existence that had matured, correct?
Yes, sir.
It had nothing to do with a new 750.
Yes, sir.
We just talked about the negative $347,000 overdraft policy, correct?
Yes, sir.
In 2 months, his account went to negative $347,000.
Yes, sir.
If it had come out that Alec Murdaugh had been diverting fees from his law firm, if Alec Murdaugh had been forced to resign from his law firm, if it had come out that he had been misappropriating money from his clients, would the bank have continued to pay charges coming in on that account?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
No uncertain terms about that.
No uncertain terms.
So all this testimony about the relationship in the bank, if the truth had come out, it's a new ball game, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in the wake of all of this, Russell Laffitte was terminated and you became CEO. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And now there's a new sheriff in town at Palmetto State Bank, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So just a splash of the financial misappropriations testimony that came in this morning. It began yesterday in the afternoon this morning. Again, outside the presence of the jury on this collateral issue of money. Was it the motive for Alec Murdaugh to kill his wife? and son. Here to chat about this is Joe Richardson, civil rights attorney. He's in Southern California. Joe, good to see you. You know, I'm having trouble with this as a motive. I think it's a whole different mindset to be a conniving, greedy guy that's coming up with a scheme to scam your clients out of money and defraud all these folks for money and turn that into, you know, to protect that scheme, I'm going to kill my wife and son. I got a problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting, and to that point, you know, the interviews during the lunch there with Anjanette, you know, kind of revealed some of the area folks are like, you know, well, why would that be a motive? Why would someone do this to draw attention away from or develop sympathy, you know what I mean, to draw attention away from financial misgivings? So they're really going to have to connect the dots. We see what's happening. You know, a lot of this is probably going to come in, you know, on some level or another, but they still have to connect the dots about why it makes sense, why he really believed that he would go so far as to kill someone, family members, in order to divert attention away or curry sympathy related to some financial misgivings. I'm not sure I get it yet either. My sense is at some point we're supposed to all get it, but I'm not sure if I got it there. And they've got to be careful to make sure they get all the jurors, you know, because if one doesn't get it, the jury hangs.
Yeah, and I really feel like if they were to start deliberating today, that's where we'd be heading. And you know, the other argument is here's a guy that has hired a relative to kill him. It didn't go so well. He survived. So if somebody's willing to do that, you know, maybe this whole big scheme makes sense somehow. Let's talk about the guts of this trial, the one that at this point is in front of the jury, the double murder trial. How do you feel it's going? How do you feel the prosecution's case is being presented?
Well, I mean, I think the prosecution's presentation is fine, but I think that the defense is getting some knocks and some hits on cross. You know, the idea that it is not, you cannot throw out the notion that perhaps there were two people at the scene. The fact that, you know, that you can't find the actual murder weapons. There's some things there that the defense can use. I mean, clearly everything's about believability, right? You know, even if there are two potential theories, you know, that theoretically creates trouble for the prosecution, but at the same time, can they get past reasonable doubt or beyond a reasonable doubt in terms of how this it is put together? There are some damning things if there are some credibility issues, because it seems like based on some of the presentation that he was actually on site and at the dog kennels and at the property, basically when he says that he wasn't. So the cell phone evidence is going to be huge. So the lady had to testify very briefly to catch a plane yesterday. So some of those things are going to figure in. I think that's going to be as important as anything in terms of them making a presentation that, no, he said in interviews, et cetera, he was here, but he was here. So why is he lying about that? That might be as big as anything.
Yeah, I think that's clearly a huge issue in favor of the prosecution, and the other evidence suggesting that he wore different clothing earlier in the day. So when did he change his clothes? We now know better the proximity between the crime scene and the house. Have you seen my drawing? You know, so he had time to get to the house and change clothes. If it wasn't planned, he had them somewhere near the crime scene. All of that stuff is going to be just huge in this case. Joe, good stuff. Stay where you are. We're going to take a quick break here, keeping an eye on the seal of the great state of South Carolina when they come back live any moment now, I expect. We will jump in there. Let's take a break. Come right back.
may be seated.
You can bring the jury.
The jury is present, sir.
Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court?
Yes, sir.
Beginning with items, State's Exhibits 111, 112, 113, I believe right before we broke, I presented to counsel and was going to offer it to the witness, and I believe it was, without objection, going to be offered into evidence.
Is that correct? Without objection. Admitted without objection.
All right, Agent, or Mr. Greer, please review what's been marked as State's Exhibit 111, 112, 113, which would align with sled items 66, 69, and 104. If you would, please let us know if you had an opportunity to inspect those items and analyze them.
Yes, sir, I did. State's Exhibit 112 is sled item 66, and that was determined to be 3 fired bullet jacket fragments and 7 pieces of lead, listed as from Margaret Murdaugh at autopsy. State's Exhibit 11.
111?
Yes, sir, excuse me, I apologize. 111 is sled item 69. And that is one combination wad listed as from left axilla of Paul Murdaugh at autopsy. In State's Exhibit 113 is sled item 104, and that was one birdshot pellet listed as found with Paul Murdaugh's clothing.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Greer, I'm going to direct your attention to State's Exhibit 90, sled item 31. Did you have an opportunity to inspect this item?
I did inspect sled item 31.
Is this the item you inspected?
This firearm is unloaded, safe to handle. Yes, sir. I see my identifying marks as sled item 31 on this firearm.
Tell us what this is.
That was determined to be one Browning Model Auto 5 Light 12 semi-automatic shotgun, 12 gauge, with serial number 03867NB211.
And did you conduct further examinations on that firearm that we'll discuss in a little bit?
Yes, sir, I did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit and entered into evidence. State's Exhibit 89, item 30 on your report. Did Did you have an opportunity to inspect that firearm?
This firearm is also unloaded. Yes, sir, I did.
And how do you know that?
When I'm looking at these firearms, we scribe our evidence, if possible, in multiple locations. So I'm looking for those identifying features of that SLED lab number and that item number, as well as my initials on some of these items that I was able to mark that. So I see that on this firearm.
Thank you. And for purposes of our results that we'll discuss shortly, did you conduct additional testing on that firearm?
Yes, sir.
Handing you what's been marked as and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 91. That would be your SLED item number 32. Tell me if you recognize that firearm, if you, in fact, were the one that received it and conducted examinations on it.
This firearm is also unloaded. I'm going to look again for those identifying marks. Yes, sir. I identify this as my SLED item 32.
Lastly, I'll direct your attention to what's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 91, State's Exhibit 88, and SLED item 33. Are you familiar with that item?
This firearm is also unloaded. Yes, sir. I'm familiar with this item.
Is that the item that you conducted tests on?
Yes, sir. This is the SLED item 33.
Attention then to State's Exhibit 210, which would be SLED item 34. That's been entered into evidence collectively as State's item 210. Are you familiar with the contents of that evidence package?
Yes, sir, I am.
And what are they?
SLED item 34, State's Exhibit 210, was determined to be 1 magazine and 26 unfired cellular and Bellow 300 blackout caliber cartridges.
It was SLED item 34, but this State's Exhibit 210 included with the rifle we just took a look at?
Yes, sir. It was submitted in the same package as the rifle.
All right, moving on to State's Exhibit 143 through, State's Exhibit 143, 144, 150, and 148. Entered into evidence already. That would be SLED items 166, 167, 168, and 169.
Yes, sir.
Handing you what's been marked as those exhibits. Would you please take a chance to review those? Let me know if you're familiar with them and if you had an opportunity to analyze them.
Yes, sir. I believe I have seen these items.
Okay. Tell us what they are, if you would.
Each of these 4 items are 12 gauge federal shot shells, and they each all have the markings that are consistent with each other: a federal premium double-aught buck 3-inch Magnum.
Do your notes indicate where they were located?
I have an indication based on the packaging.
Okay, what does the packaging indicate?
The packaging for State's Exhibit 150, from what I can tell, says "from red bin on workshop bench." For State's Exhibit 144 says "from red bin on workshop bench." State's Exhibit 143 says "from red bin on workshop bench." And State's Exhibit 148 also says "from red bin on workshop bench."
All right, thank you. I'm now going to hand you what's been previously entered into evidence as State's Exhibits 145, 146, 147, and 149. That would be sleds number 162, 163, 164, and 165. Same as before. If you wouldn't mind, please take a look at those and let me know if you are familiar with their contents. Now I'm going to hand you what's been previously entered.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us what they are.
All 4 of these items are Winchester 12-gauge shot shells, and they all appear to have the same information on the shot shell of dry lock 3-inch with the number 2.
I'm going to hand you what's been previously entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 213, sled item 45. Please take a look at that piece of evidence and let me know if you are aware of what it is.
Yes, sir. This appears to be a box for ammunition in the .300 blackout caliber.
And does that box indicate the maker of that 300 blackout ammunition?
It does.
Who's the manufacturer?
Cellier and Billow.
S&B?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is State's Exhibit 260, which was previously marked for identification purposes only. State's Exhibit 260 contains sled items 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39. Mr. Greer, I'm handing you what's been now admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 260. Please take if you would, please take a moment to review those items and let me know if you're familiar with them.
Yes, sir. I am familiar with this evidence.
And what are they?
These are sled items 35 through 39. These were each fired 300 blackout caliber cartridge cases with the head stamp of Cellier and Bello.
Thank you. What's been marked previously as State's Exhibit 261 for identification purposes only. This would reference sled item numbers 108 to 135. Collectively. Agent Greer, these items now admitted under State's Exhibit 261. Please take a moment to review those items, any notes or information you might have on them, and let me know if you're aware of what they are.
Yes, container AB was submitted to the laboratory, and it is to contain sled items 108 through 135. I am familiar with these items, and this package appears to not have been tampered with since I sealed it last, as I see my initials and seal date there at the bottom.
And what's inside that package?
Inside this package, there are 300 blackout caliber cartridge cases, as well as 12 gauge shot shells.
And did you have an opportunity to perform an analysis on these items?
Yes, sir, I did.
Mr. Greer, I'm offering you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 398. That would reference sled item 22.4. And I believe without objection, we'll offer it as evidence.
Correct.
If you would, please take a look at that item and cross-reference with your report and let me know if you're familiar with what it is.
Yes, sir. This container contains 2 sled items. That's sled item 22.4, which is a swab of debris that I took, a reddish-brown debris swab from the right side of the item 22 receiver.
Which item is 22?
Item 22 was the camouflage Benelli Model Super Black Eagle 3 semi-automatic shotgun. And it also contains sled item 22.5, which was another swab from that same shotgun, and that was reddish-brown debris swab from the left side of the item 22 receiver above manufacturer information.
And tell us a little bit about the swabs and what you're looking for with that.
Yes, sir. When I receive items of evidence, a part of my process in documenting the evidence and opening the evidence is to look to see if there's any foreign or trace material on that item. When I was examining this firearm and opening it for the first time, I took note of that. And when I did that, I noticed those two areas that I saw reddish-brown debris. In order to preserve that prior to my examination, I swabbed those items so that way they could be collected and maintained.
All right, Mr. Greer, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 399, which references sled item 22.7. State would offer that into evidence after you identify it, and I believe without objection.
Yes, sir. I do recognize this, and this package is still sealed with my initials and seal date. Item 22.7 was the unfired 12-gauge shot shell that was submitted with the item 22 camouflage Benelli Super Black Eagle 3 shotgun. During my testing, I used that submitted ammunition that came with the firearm to test fire the weapon with, and that is represented here as sled item 22.7, State's Exhibit 399.
Okay. Submitted.
All right, Mr. Greer. Before we move on to your analysis and your results, if you would, please tell me a little bit about the firearms identification process and the number of ways that you use to identify whether a firearm shot a particular projectile.
Sure. As we were discussing earlier, when I receive evidence into the laboratory and I begin my examination, there's a lot of documentation that has to happen. First, as we're opening the evidence, we're going to, one, make sure to preserve any of that trace or foreign material. We use photography to document the evidence as we're opening it and to photograph the actual item itself and that trace material or foreign material. We also use a lot of departmental worksheets where I take notes on the firearm, the magazine, the fired components such as the cartridge case or the bullet, and also any other thing that we need to document throughout the process, or unfired cartridges. We take note of all of that, writing down all of these characteristics that we're seeing on the evidence. In order to do our examination, though, we have to look at these fired ammunition components, these cartridge cases and these fired bullets, and look at their class characteristics. So we're going to count on a bullet. We're going to look at its rifling, trying to determine its caliber through weight and measuring it, and counting those number of lands and grooves that comprise that rifling. Like we spoke earlier, that's what gives that bullet that twist. We document that. We may also look at those cartridge case and look at those things that have the same class characteristic. That could be the caliber of that cartridge case, the shape of that firing pin, and any overall features. Items that share the same class characteristics will compare together. And it's kind of like climbing a ladder at this point. Those items that share the same class characteristics, we climb to the next step on that ladder and we compare those items. We're going to look at those fired bullets with each other, those fired cartridge cases with each other, and we're going to look at all of that under high magnification. We use a comparison microscope in our laboratory to look at these items. And basically, if you think back to a biology lab that you may have had in school or some kind of science lab, when you look through a microscope, that's what we're doing. But we're using this comparison microscope to look at two things at one time. And we use it uses an ocular bridge so we can look through like a set of binoculars to look at these things. We can change the angles that we're looking at, all these tiny little scratches and striations and impressions on the evidence that you can't really see with the naked eye. We're going to look at it under that magnification and compare all of that to each other to help us reach our final goal, which is a conclusion. If we have firearms that are submitted, we'll also have that documented. Those firearms that have the same class characteristics, for instance, if we have a gun that's the same caliber as our fire bullet and it shares the same rifling specifications, then that means we can compare that bullet with test fires from the firearm. So I'll make sure the firearm is safe to fire, and we'll shoot that firearm within our laboratory. We have several different ways to do that with a water recovery tank and a tunnel that we're able to shoot and recover those test specimens that I physically shot from the firearm. I'll compare those test specimens with each other to look at how those marks that I was looking for under the microscope that we were talking about, to see how they're reproducing on those test fires in whether that be a bullet or cartridge case. Compare that under the microscope, and then compare that where necessary to the submitted evidence. After looking at all that, I reach a conclusion about whether this was fired by this item or not, or whatever that conclusion may be. I arrive at that, and I write that conclusion down. At that point in time, another qualified examiner within our firearms department will review the evidence themselves. They'll look at all the submitted evidence and compare that with each other and with those test specimens that I fired, and arrive at their own conclusion. If they're in agreement, then they'll sign off on my conclusions, and a report can be drafted. And that's how we get the information out to our customers through our report. At SLED, we have the 100% micro verification process, where everything that we're issuing a conclusion on is reviewed by another examiner. So that case file, all that documentation that I generate, goes to that examiner or reviewer. It undergoes a technical review and an administrative review before a report can be released. And in a nutshell, that's how we work each case. There are different parts, there's different items of evidence that we get in each case, but that's a quick overview of how each case has worked, and that process was applied to this case.
Thank you. Mr. Greer, speaking of the peer review process that goes on in the lab, is that conducted blindly, meaning the person reviewing your report doesn't know what your findings are?
That's correct.
Okay. Could you explain, so the subsequent reviewer doesn't know what you decided in your first prime opinion, is that right?
Right. I'll look at the evidence myself, arrive at a conclusion, and the second examiner will look at it and come to their conclusion on their own. Once they have arrived at their own conclusion, looking at the evidence with their own eyes on the microscope, they'll read my results to see if they're in agreement with what I have determined or not.
And that, I think you just testified, but was that done in this case?
Yes, sir, it was.
Before we move on, please tell me what it means for a cartridge casing to be cycled through a weapon. What does that mean?
Sure. If you think back when we were looking at the cartridge earlier, an unfired cartridge, when we look at these items under magnification on the microscope, there are several different areas that we're going to be concerned with in looking at for those microscopic scratches and impressions, those little striations. One of those would be a firing pin, and that's what comes through the breech face of the gun to detonate the primer. Also the breech face marks on that primer from the gun. Ejector marks, that's what kicks that cartridge out of the gun or the cartridge case. Extractor marks, that's what pulls it out of the chamber of the firearm so that it can be kicked out. And also chamber marks, and that's on the body of the cartridge case, that cylindrical portion. So when we're looking at evidence, our ultimate goal is to say something was fired by this gun or they were fired by the same gun. And we do that, and we can rely on those firing pin marks and those breech face marks, because that's what struck the primer and caused it to detonate and fire that cartridge. There's other things that we can look at just to single out, like extractor marks and ejector marks and chamber marks of such, that we can look at to say that a cartridge has traveled through a gun. For example, if you were to load a magazine, insert it into a semi-automatic firearm, pull the slide back, load that cartridge into the chamber, and then you decide you're not going to shoot or you need to remove that cartridge for any reason, you would pull back on that slide of the handgun and the cartridge would be extracted out of the chamber and ejected. Through that process, there can be marks left on the cartridge. That also would happen when you're firing it, but that's not what detonated that primer and set that off. Those ejector marks, those extractor marks, and that just means that that cartridge, we can say, has traveled through that firearm at one point in time. That's not to say it was fired by, but it's cycling marks that we're seeing as it cycled through that gun.
So is it accurate to say then that the cycling marks are separate and distinct from the actual firing pin marks that when you're reviewing these under a microscope?
Yes, sir. As far as what we're looking at geographically on the cartridge case, those would be in a different location when we're looking for those ejector marks or extractor marks or chamber marks. That's not something that we typically would be seeing on the primer area that detonated that cartridge.
Thank you. If I could, beginning with your results, if we could begin with your examination of all the shotgun shells, so the actual shells that were retrieved as part of your analysis, beginning with sled items 9 and 10, which would be states item 33 and 34. Could you tell me where these items were retrieved? Remind us where these items were retrieved from, first of all.
Sled items 9 and 10, that's States Exhibit 33 and 34. Item 9 was from marker 9, and item 10 was from marker 10, which is my understanding that it was at the feed or storage room.
And I'm going to put these on the Elmo, but if you would tell us what your analysis of these items revealed.
Yes, sir.
Objection to these opinions based on prior ruling.
Please proceed, Mr. Griffin.
Yes, sir. When I compared and examined those two shot shells with each other, I determined that those two shot shells had been fired by the same firearm.
And do you know the make and model or the make and manufacturer of those two weapons, projectiles or shells?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right.
Sled item 9. Yes, sir.
Which item 9 is which item?
Item 9 is the red and color shot shell, which is States Exhibit 34.
Okay.
That was a Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum shot shell. And sled item 10 is the black and color shot shell, States Exhibit 33, and that is a fired 12-gauge Winchester Dry Light number 2 shot shell.
All right, Mr. Greer, moving on to referencing item 22 collectively.
Yes, sir.
States Exhibit 399, 22.7 on your report.
Yes, sir.
Did y'all put it somewhere? This would be States Exhibit 399. Did you have an opportunity, or could you tell us what that is?
Yes, sir. That was the unfired 12-gauge shot shell that was submitted originally with the item 22 shotgun, which is the camouflage color Benelli shotgun.
Could you go ahead and open that package for us, please?
Yes, sir. Do you have scissors or just?
Remind us again where that item was retrieved from.
This item was originally submitted with the item 22 camouflage Benelli shotgun that was submitted to the laboratory.
meaning it was actually loaded into the shotgun?
When I received it, it was not loaded in the shotgun, but this was an unfired shot shell as it was submitted. This is the shot shell that I test fired in that shotgun.
All right, very good. Thank you. I'll put it on the Elmo. Tell us what the make and manufacture of this item is.
Yes, sir. This is also a 12-gauge Federal shot shell, and on the shot shell itself, it also says Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum.
Direct your attention back to State's Item 34. Are those two items consistent with each other?
Yes, sir. It does appear that they are consistent in construction and their head stamp information.
If you would, since let's work through the number of firearms that were identified by you. Did you have an opportunity to test those firearms with the projectiles retrieved?
Yes, sir, I did.
What were your results for item 30, the Mossberg pump-action shotgun?
In regards to the two shot shells?
Correct.
My results after examining that, it was determined that the item 30 shotgun did not fire the items 9 and 10 shot shells.
And could you move on to your item 31, State's item, one moment, I'm sorry. And the item you just referenced was State's item 89, the Mossberg shotgun. State's exhibit 90, sled item 31. Please tell us about that item.
Yes, sir. Based on my examination, I was able to determine that item 31 was not fired by, that item 31 did not fire items 9 and 10.
All right, concerning State's exhibit 91, your sled item 32, that would be a Benelli Super Black Eagle 2, black in color. Could you tell us your results of that?
Yes, sir. Based on my examination, it was determined that item 32 did not fire items 9 and 10.
Item 32 was, however, recovered with a number of rounds in it. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
And what were those rounds?
Item 32, the Benelli model Super Black Eagle 2 shotgun, was submitted with 2 unfired 12-gauge shot shells, Federal and Winchester.
All right, did you have an opportunity to compare the shot shells with item 22, the camouflage color Benelli Super Black Eagle 3?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right, and if you would, please tell us your findings concerning item 22.
Sure. When I compared sled items 9 and 10 with those test shot shells that I fired through the item 22 camouflage shotgun, the results of those comparisons were inconclusive. I was unable to determine whether or not items 9 and 10 were fired by item 22 or if they had been fired by another firearm with similar characteristics.
And were you able to eliminate item number 33 from this round of testing concerning the shotgun shells?
That's correct. The shotgun shells were not fired by the item 33 rifle.
Moving on to your results, moving on to your testing, or did you conduct additional testing of 300 blackout rounds?
Yes, sir, I did.
And of the cases of the ammunition, both fired, spent, so shell casings, or unfired ammunition, were the ones we examined today that were retrieved from the scene, what make and manufacturer were they of?
The cartridge cases were head stamped with the S&B logo and 300 blackout caliber.
Did you have an opportunity to test fire and examine sled item 33, states exhibit 88, the 300 blackout rifle, black in color?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. Could you please tell us your results from that examination for that weapon?
In regards to test firing the weapon?
Correct.
Yes, sir. When I examined the item 33, I test fired it using the item 34 magazine. That was the magazine that was packaged alongside the rifle. During that test firing, the first available cartridge in the magazine, as I inserted the magazine into the firearm, it was fed and chambered into the rifle correctly and as I expected. The cartridge was successfully test fired, and then it extracted and ejected from the rifle again as I expected it to. However, as the firearm cycled, meaning when that bolt was coming back forward to load the next available cartridge in the magazine, it failed to feed that cartridge into the chamber, and I had to manually cycle it to load the next cartridge into the chamber. That issue did not prevent me from test firing the firearm, and no further analysis to determine that cause was conducted.
Referencing your results, sled item 128 in your exam, were you able to identify any cartridge casings that would have been fired by item 33 rifle? Your item 33 states exhibit 90, states exhibit 88.
Yes, sir, I was.
And just to be clear, we're talking about this 300 blackout rifle. Is that correct? We're talking about your item 33?
Yes, sir. That is sled item 33 that I examined and test fired.
What were you able to identify with the rounds recovered, 300 blackout rounds recovered? Please list their item numbers as well.
Yes, sir. So I compared all the 300 blackout cartridges that I received, and based on my examinations and comparisons, I was able to determine that sled item 38, 109, 110, 121, 126, and 127 were fired by the item 33 rifle.
And those would be various items that were recovered that we've been through and identified in the state's exhibits. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So some of them you would say were fired by item 33?
That is correct.
I know you mentioned before with item 33, or sorry, state's exhibit 89. I'm sorry, state's exhibit 88. I know you'd mentioned before that it wasn't working properly. Does that inhibit your ability to test it in any way?
No, sir. I was able to test fire that firearm and recover those test specimens that I needed in order to make those comparisons.
Do malfunctions occur in firearms from time to time?
Yes, sir, they can occur.
But nevertheless, you were able to simulate you were able to fire the weapon eventually?
Yes, sir. I was able to test fire the weapon and recover those test specimens that I needed.
All right, I'm going to reference sled items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, 39, 108, 111 through 120. Do you understand which items I'm referencing?
Yes, sir, I do.
And how did you compare those, or how did the analysis go when compared with item 33, states item 88?
Yes, sir. When I compared those items, that was items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, 39, 108, 111 through 120, and 122 through 124, and 128 with each other. And when I compared those with those test specimens that I fired through item 33, The results of those comparisons were inconclusive. Again, that means I was unable to determine if they had been fired by item 33 or they had been fired by another firearm or firearms with similar characteristics.
Still on item 33, State's Exhibit 88, the recovered 300 blackout rifle. Were you able to compare the ejection and extraction marks of various 300 blackout rounds recovered and casings recovered?
Yes, sir.
And what was your findings concerning some of those items? And please list the items, and we will go back and identify State's exhibits in a minute.
Yes, sir. In looking at the mechanism marks on items 111, 114 through 115, 118 through 119, 123, and 128, I was able to determine that those items had all been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the item 33 rifle at some previous time.
All right. Mr. Greer, I'm going to ask you.
I'm going to renew my objection to the next opinion that he's about to offer based on our prior rulings, just for the record.
Yes, sir. It's not.
Prior arguments and understanding the court's rule.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Greer, I'm going to real quick reference on your chart, on your list, items marked sled items 2 through 7, 35, 36, and 37, and sled item 39. And that would be State's Exhibits 63 through 68. And just please verify that I've handed you State's Exhibits 63 through 68 and identify if they correlate to items 2 through 7 on your chart.
Yes, sir. These State's Exhibits 63 through 68 are sled items 2 through 7.
And then I'm going to show you what's been marked as take the court's indulgence. State's Exhibit 260. State's Exhibit 250, which correlates to slide items 35 through 39. Please verify that for me.
Yes, sir. This is State's Exhibit 260, which is a container that is to contain sled items 35 through 39.
Okay. Slide items 2 through 7. State's Exhibit 63 through 68. After review of the crime scene, where were those located?
After reviewing the crime scene diagram, it's my understanding that those cartridge cases were at marker numbers that were near or around the body of Margaret Murdaugh.
And those would be 300 blackout rounds, is that right?
That's correct. They're 300 blackout caliber.
Or they were spent casings?
Yes, sir. Those are fired cartridge cases.
And State's Exhibit 260, items 35 through 39, what are those again?
Those were all fired 300 blackout caliber cartridge cases, head stamped with the S&B logo and 300 blackout caliber.
And where were those items recovered?
Listed on our submission documents, those were from the ground at side entrance door.
Have you physically been there to the Moselle property?
Yes, sir, I have.
Are you familiar with the ground at the side entrance door?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Is that the side entrance that leads into the pool table and the gun room?
Based on my understanding of the scene, yes, sir. I believe that is where those were collected from, near that door that goes into that room.
We have 300 blackout round casings collected from around Maggie's body, and we have 300 casings collected from the house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you have any notes? Did you take any contemporaneous notes on the condition of your items 35 to 39, those collected at the side of the house?
Yes, sir, I do believe so. I'm going to reference my case file here to confirm.
Would referencing your file help you refresh your memory on that matter?
Yes, sir, it would. During my examination, when I looked at items 35 through 39, which were recovered near that door area, I did note that they were tarnished and weathered in my case file.
Mr. Greer, tell us what you found concerning those items.
Based on my examination, it was determined that items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, and 39 had matching mechanism marks, and it was concluded that those items had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time.
So if I understand it correctly, the items collected right by Maggie had been loaded into, extracted to, and ejected by the same firearm that were identified that items were picked up by the side of the house.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Court's indulgence. Additional items were collected as well, and did you have an opportunity to analyze those?
Yes, sir, I did.
And identify the sled item numbers, and then we'll identify the state's exhibit numbers.
Those were sled items number 108, 113, 116, 117, and 122.
Handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 261, which includes various items. And what are they again?
Yes, sir. This is a container that contains multiple 300 blackout caliber cartridge cases and fired 12-gauge shot shells.
And in that collective bin include 300 blackout rounds of the items you just listed?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, tell us what your findings were for those items. And where were these collected?
Based on the submission documentation, those were collected from areas such as to the left of a shooting chair near field, from a right corner near field, from in front of a shooter's chair, under a table. Would you like me to identify each location?
For those items, have you had an opportunity to review some body-worn camera footage and evidence and kind of identify what that actually meant?
Oh, yes, sir.
And generally, when it says left leg and right leg and near the front or back, what is it talking about?
It appears that there's some type of shooting area that those were collected from.
Okay. What were your findings concerning those items?
It was determined that those items, and to include items 108, 113, 116, 117, and 122, also had those same matching mechanism marks, to conclude that they had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm as those at the crime scene around Margaret Murdaugh's body, and those several recovered from the home.
So the items collected around Margaret Murdaugh's body matched the items collected outside the house, which matched items that were collected in the field at the shooting range.
Yes, sir. I was able to identify that the cartridge cases recovered, items 2 through 7 near the body, did have matching mechanism marks with several of the items from the area around the home and those in the shooting field, and several of those in the shooting field, to conclude that some of those had been, that those had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time.
I'm going to reference slide item 8. That would be State's item 250. State's Exhibit 250. I'm going to put it on the screen. What is that item again? Remind us, please.
Sled item 8 was one fired bullet determined to be .300 blackout caliber, listed as near tire impression at marker 8.
Recovered from the scene?
Yes, sir, at marker 8.
Is that a fire projectile?
Yes, sir, that is a fired bullet.
Is that, how much does that bullet weigh?
According to my notes when I weighed that projectile, it weighed approximately 147.4 grains.
Handing you what's marked as Exhibit 213. Remind us again what that is.
State's Exhibit 213 appears to be an ammunition box marked cellular and below and .300 blackout caliber.
What are the grains indicated on that box?
On the side of this box, it has information about the projectile, and it says 147 grains on the side.
Is State's Exhibit up on the Elmo, is that consistent with a 147 grain projectile?
Yes, sir. That bullet appears to be intact, and based on my examination and looking at these fired bullets as a part of an examination, I would say that would be consistent with being 147 grains.
Do you have an opportunity to inspect sled item 12?
Yes, sir, I did.
Tell us your results of that.
Sled item 12 was one fired bullet, determined to also be .300, most consistent with being .300 blackout caliber, and it was listed as from bedding inside doghouse.
And did you have an opportunity to weigh that projectile?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what was the results of that?
When I weighed that projectile, it was approximately 146.8 grains.
147 grain unfired ammunition?
Yes, sir, I would say that would be consistent with 147 grains.
Lastly, I'm going to show you what's been marked as state and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 143, 144, 148, and 150. Could you please remove those collectively and let me know if you are familiar with the make and manufacture of those items?
State's Exhibit 143 is a 12-gauge Federal shot shell. It says Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum on the shell, on the side of the shell. State's Exhibit 144 is also a 12-gauge Federal shot shell. On the side of it, it says Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum. State's Exhibit 148 is also a 12-gauge Federal shot shell. On the side of it, it says Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum. And State's Exhibit 150 is also a 12-gauge federal shot shell with the same information of federal premium double-aught buck 3-inch Magnum.
Are all of those 4 exhibits that you just reviewed of the same manufacturer and same make and model?
Yes, sir. They appear to have the same information and also in their in their construction as well.
If I use one for demonstrative purposes, all the rest are the same?
Yes, sir. They appear to be all consistent.
Showing you what you just identified. This would be States 143. Is this the item you just looked at, Mr. Greer?
Yes, sir.
Showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 34. Remind me again which item that is. Sled item 9?
State's Exhibit 34 was sled item 9. That's correct.
And what's the make and model of that?
Sled item 9, State's Exhibit 34, was a fired 12-gauge shot shell with the federal premium double-aught buck 3-inch Magnum, red in color.
Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 399. This would be, where's item 9 from?
Item 9 is listed as from marker 9, and again, based on my understanding of the crime scene document, that was near or around the speed room.
And marked as State's Exhibit 399, sled item 22.7. Where is that item from?
Sled item 22.7, State's Exhibit 399, was the unfired 12-gauge shot shell that was originally submitted as item 22 with the camouflage Benelli shotgun.
State's item 4, and you've already reviewed this. Exhibit 4 for the state, 22 for you. Is that the same shotgun that you're referring to?
Yes, sir. This is my item 22 shotgun.
Camouflage Benelli Super Black Eagle 3. Is that right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And all those items are of the same model and manufacturer. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. They all appear to have the same head stamp information and information on the side of the shell, and their case construction all appears to be consistent.
Reference your item 10 now. Well, first let me collectively hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 144. Sorry. State's Exhibits 145, 146, 147, and 149 collectively. Please take them out individually, review them. Let me know if you recall what they are. Make and model, make and manufacture is what I'm interested in.
State's Exhibit 145, it's head stamp Winchester 12 gauge with dry lock 3-inch and a 2 on the shell. State's Exhibit 146 is head stamp Winchester 12 gauge. On the shell it says dry lock 3-inch number 2. State's Exhibit 147 is head stamp Winchester 12 gauge. On the shell, dry lock 3-inch number 2. In State's Exhibit 149, head stamp Winchester 12 gauge. On the shell, dry lock 3-inch number 2.
You notes indicate where those items were recovered?
Based on the packaging.
What is the packaging? Where does the packaging indicate those items were recovered?
The packaging for State's Exhibit 145 says from estate box on bookshelf in gun room. State's Exhibit 146 says from Kent box on bookshelf in gun room. State's Exhibit 147 says from nightstand in Paul's room. And State's Exhibit 149 says from estate box on bookshelf in gun room.
And hand you what's been marked and identified as State's Exhibit 33, slide item 10. Where was that located?
Sled item 10, again, was a fired 12-gauge shot shell, head stamp Winchester 12-gauge on the side, dry lock 3-inch number 2, and that was located at marker 10, which again, based on my understanding, was near that feed room.
Identify, please, the make and manufacturer of that item.
Yes, sir. It was head stamp Winchester 12-gauge, and on the shell it says dry lock 3-inch 2.
Is that consistent with the make and manufacture of all the other items you just reviewed?
Yes, sir, it is.
Are those all the items you just reviewed, Mr. Greer?
Yes, sir.
All right. No further questions from the state.
We'll take a few minutes break, ladies and gentlemen. Do not discuss the case.
Welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. I'm Linda Kenny Bodden. Well, we are covering the case of Alec Murdaugh in South Carolina. He is accused of the murder in a brutal way, putting a shotgun to his son's forehead and killing him, and then also killing his wife with another weapon, according to the prosecution. Well, what was the motive? The state says it's his financial motive. It's because he was stealing from clients. He was trying to pay Peter by robbing Paul, and then he was just spending money hand over fist. Well, in their attempt to do this out of the presence of the jury, the judge has been listening to testimony from various victims. And one of the victims is Mr. Satterfield. Now, who is he? He is the son of Gloria Satterfield. She was the longtime 20-year housekeeper. She was considered a member of the Murdaugh family. In 2018, she was found at the bottom of the steps at the same place that the killings occurred. According to the Murdaughs, the dog, one of the dogs tripped her, and then she died in the hospital several days later. Well, there was a civil suit, but unfortunately, the money, over $4 million, never got to Satterfield's son. But why don't we listen to one of those sons on the stand this morning in front of the jury?
As time went on, did you have conversations with Alec asking him about the case and what was going on with the case or anything like that?
Yes, not very rarely, but every few months or so.
And what would he tell you, just generally?
First, it was hard, and he knows I was making progress, and he kind of left it at that.
He said it was hard, but they were making progress?
Yes.
Did he tell you anything about whether or not you and your brother were to get any money after the medical bills were paid?
Said he was hoping.
Right. Did he give you any idea of the amount?
If I remember correctly, one time he said he was trying to get each of you at least $100,000 apiece.
Each of you, you and your brother?
Yes.
Okay. At some point in time, did your family advise you that there was some media reporting about a settlement in the case?
Yes.
All right. And at that time, had you heard anything from Alec or Corey or Chad or anybody about a settlement in the case?
No.
All right. And what, if anything, did you do after your family? Did they ask you to do anything?
Yeah, they said you might want to kind of follow up on it and kind of see.
And did you make a phone call to Alec?
Yes.
All right. And what month was that in?
I believe the last time I talked to him was in June of 21.
June of 21?
Yes.
Around the time of the murders?
Yes.
And what did you ask him?
I can't believe what I asked him, but it was still making progress and be ready to settle, by the end of the year.
He told you it was still making progress and he was hoping to settle by the end of the year?
Yes.
Did he tell you that they had already gotten a settlement for $505,000?
No.
Did he tell you that they had already gotten a settlement for $3.8 million?
No.
Had he ever told you that there was an umbrella policy for $5 million?
No.
Did he ever mention to you anything about Forge?
No.
Did he mention anything to you about structuring any settlement?
No.
Did you give him permission to steal your money?
No.
Ultimately, in the wake of all of this, you've come to find out that there was a settlement for $505,000, correct?
Yes.
And it was diverted by Alec Murdaugh, correct?
Yes.
And ultimately, you've come to find out that there was a settlement under the umbrella policy for $3.8 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or thereabouts, correct?
Yes.
And a large proportion of that was diverted by Alec Murdaugh. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you ever get 1 cent from Alec Murdaugh when he was still, before all of this happened?
No.
And it took, after this happening, and it took a legal process for that to happen. Is that right?
Yes.
And ultimately, is it your understanding that he confessed judgment to taking money for both of those? Is that right? In June of 2021, you made a call to him asking the status of this case. Is that correct?
I can't remember if he called me or if I called him, but yes, I talked to him in June 2021.
You talked to him in June of 2021?
Yes.
And there were reports in the media about that settlement, correct?
Yes.
Joining me to discuss this testimony and more, our own Gigi McKelvey, who has been down inside that courtroom. Gigi, good afternoon, and I can't wait to ask you this question. I know Tony Satterfield was not testifying in front of the jury, but what happened in the courtroom? How are people feeling about when this young man did testify that Alec Murdaugh stole over $4 million from him and his brother, and he was then ejected? By the way, his trailer that he lived in was foreclosed on. The depravity.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And you think about, over 2 decades she dedicated to this family, helped raise the boys. They called her Go-Go. And of all people, after she died on their property, he stole millions of dollars from her 2 boys, who she probably spent less time with because of her job helping raise Paul and Buster, as well as working around the house. People were shocked and disgusted by that.
Yeah, and when he got off the stand and he's walking out, what was the reaction of the courtroom, even if the jury wasn't there?
Well, yeah, the jury wasn't present, but, I think everybody felt very proud of him. He got up there and stated the facts. He did not seem intimidated sitting with Alec Murdaugh facing him. I think everybody just felt some pride for that kid. He did a great job.
That is just wonderful. I know his attorney said that was on a lunch break and said he didn't have to go on after him because he did such a good job. And I think we were all like with our mouths agog and said, wow, this is fabulous that he was able to do that. But there's been more happening in the courtroom with the firearms expert, Mr. Greer, on the stand. Has he made a connection to any of the guns around the property or that may have been around the property since the actual killing weapon, at least the 300 Blackout, has not been found?
We did finally hear the answer to that, and it is yes. The casings found around Maggie Murdaugh's body match some of the older casings found all over the property. So that means that shell casings found on the gun range, right by the house, and around Maggie's body were likely fired from the same weapon. So we know at least now, likely one of the very own Murdaugh guns was used to kill Maggie.
And that alone is horrifying. And then I think I heard some testimony that there was a shotgun shell, a buckshot, and a bird shot. The ones